One of the techniques that you're going to hear a lot about when you start your gel printing journey is how to use masks to create beautiful gel prints. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. Hi, I'm Jenna McLean, printer, and my goal with this channel is to help you develop your skills in all sorts of different printing techniques like gel printing, block printing, cyanotype, and others. And in this particular lesson today, we're going to create some masks and make a beautiful print using these masks. So let's dive into it. But before we talk about masks, let's talk about stencils. Now we all know what stencils are. And stencils are used a lot in gel printing. You can get small stencils like this. You can get larger ones like this that will cover your entire plate if you're using an 8x10 plate. The idea is pretty simple. You just lay these on the plate. You can take paint and your brayer and just push it through the holes in the stencil. And the thing about stencils is they allow paint to come through. I created this print with about 4 or 5 layers of stencils and regular acrylic paint. And these here, I used stencils. I put them on my 5x7 gel plate. And I used these distress oxide pads. I just put the stencil down and I went like this with the pad. I pushed this paint or ink right through the stencil, and that's how these were created. So stencils are pretty easy to understand. Can you create your own stencils? Yes, you can. You can use an X-Acto knife to cut a design into some acetate like this, or let's say an old file folder. But I don't know about you, but there's no way I'm going to be cutting something like this out and creating my own stencil with an X-Acto knife. This would take me probably 3 or 4 days just to cut all this, and I just don't have the patience for it. But masks are a completely different thing and they are really easy to do. So let me show you what a mask is. So very quickly, I'm just going to show you how masks work. I've got 2 gel plates side by side. I'm going to get some paint on here, roll it out. Here is a mask that I cut out of just a piece of copy paper. I'm going to place it on here. This is going to have no mask. Put that on there and rub. Here's what this paper looks like with no mask. And this is what it looks like with a mask. So that's why they're called masks. This prevented the paint from getting onto this piece of paper. Now, is there paint underneath here? Yes, and it's going to be stuck to the underside of the mask. So there you have it. That's all a mask is. And I'm going to show you how to create your own masks in this video, and then how to create prints by layering masks, one layer on top of another on top of another. Creating masks is easy. Just draw a design on something and cut it out quickly with a pair of scissors. I live in New York City, and recently I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and they happened to have a beautiful display of some Matisse cutouts, and I took photos of them, and that's what you're looking at right now. I decided to create some Matisse inspired masks for this video. So using the photos that I had taken, I drew these designs on this old file folder. That's all this is. It's just a beat up old file folder. I drew them in pencil, and then I started going over them with a Sharpie. I drew some others over here that kind of have a Matisse look. I happen to be using an old file folder for making my mask today, but you can use a lot of other things. You could use notebook dividers. This is a plastic notebook divider. You could use them whether they're plastic or if they're made of this kind of paper. You can use poster board. You can use scrap paper. When I gel print, I keep all the prints that are really screwed up in this folder called gel scrap, and I usually use them here to clean off my brayer. But I have all sorts of scrap paper here. And what happens is that because these papers, these scrap papers, have paint on them, they're kind of thick. So you could cut masks out of these and use them, and they're probably not going to tear when you peel them back off the plate because they have somewhat of a thickness to them. You can also use acetate to create masks, and a lot of people like to use Tyvek. Now, if you're in the United States, visit your local post office and get these priority mail envelopes. These are free. They are on the counter in your local post office. And these do not have bubble wrap inside. These are just Tyvek. And the great thing about these is because they're Tyvek, they're not going to tear. These are really tough. Your tax dollars at work, my American viewers, you pay for these. Go to your local post office and grab a few and use them to cut out masks. Right now I'm going to finish these masks. I'm going to finish drawing them and cutting them out, and I will be speeding up and editing the video. I'll see you in a minute. I am done cutting out my masks. I have some long shapes here. I have some smaller ones. I really like these star shapes that Matisse used in his cutouts. And I have some other small ones like this. So I'm getting ready to do a project. And I just want to point out, when you're cutting out your masks, you may end up with scraps of folder or whatever it is that you're using that would make a great mask itself. This is just something that I cut away from one of these designs, and I'm going to keep it because this would make a perfect little mask. I'm going to start a project now, and I'm going to be showing you how to use masks in multiple layers in one print. So I'm only printing on one sheet of paper. And when you're using the same sheet of paper over and over and over again to create a print, you're going to have to be constantly putting it down on the plate and pulling it back, putting it down and pulling it back. Sometimes registration is important. With registration, by that I mean putting the piece of paper in the exact same spot where it was before. So I'm going to show you one of the ways that you can do this. This is from Gel Elf. I will link this in the description below. This is simply a gizmo that helps you line things up. You put it at the edge of your gel plate like this, and if you take a good look at it, you can see that there are some lines here, and that helps you line up your paper. So I'm going to put this here, and my goal in this project is for my paper to line up with this line here and this line here. If I do that, I should have a really nice looking print, and I can make sure that things are registering properly. Now there's another way that you can do this. You don't have to buy this thing. You can start your project by putting a piece of paper underneath your plate, the same size paper that you intend to print with. You can try to center your plate on top of the paper like that, and then when you go to print, you just make sure you keep lining up this corner of your paper with this corner right here, like so. And that way, when you keep putting the paper down on the plate, it's registering. I'm putting a piece of scrap paper right here for rolling off my brayer if I have too much paint on the plate. So I'm going to roll out my first layer of paint. I'm going to use a combination of these Liquitex yellows and oranges. And for this project, I want to just mix these paints up pretty well. So I'm going to take my sheet of paper. I'm going to line it up here as best I can. I'm going to rub it, and I'm just going to do a pull. So this is our first layer of paint. I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to put some more paint on the plate and then start putting down my masks. For my next layer of paint, I'm going to roll on a mix of blues, now it's time to put the masks on top of the plate. And I can't take too much time with this because this paint is going to dry, but I'm going to put these in a scattered pattern around the plate because I want to create a sense of movement. I can see why Matisse had so much fun doing this. I love these crazy shapes. Let's put this little guy right here. So now I'm going to take the same piece of paper that I just created, the same background sheet. I'm going to do my best to line it up right here along the edge. And I'm going to push from left to right, and I'm going to give this a good rub. And now these masks that I put on the plate, they're going to prevent the blue paint from getting on this sheet of paper. The areas that don't have a mask, they are going to pick up the blue paint. But let's see what happens here. There. So as you can see, the masks prevented the blue paint from getting onto this sheet of paper. So this mask here prevented the blue from getting on right here. We already have an interesting look. You could leave it just like this, but I'm going to keep going. So what happens when you lift up the masks? Well, let's take a look. I'm pulling these carefully, even though they are made from the file folder, manila stuff. They are sticking pretty strongly to the plate, and I don't want to tear them. And I'm setting all of the masks that I used right here in one pile, and I'll explain to you why I'm setting them aside from the others that I created. I'll explain that in just a second. So this is dry by now, and you can just leave this here. You can clean this up if you want. I'm going to leave it on here because I have a feeling that this ghost design here is going to look really good in the print, so I'm just going to leave it be. Now I'm going to add another layer of paint and some more masks, so let's get to that. This time I'm going to go a little bit lighter with my paint choices. I'm going to put a mix of paints down and brayer them off, and then I'm going to put down masks again. Now, what you can do is use the same masks that you used for this layer, but if you do, you have to mix up the arrangement. You don't want to put them down exactly where they were before. So this print, I'm just going to put it up here. It'll be out of camera view, but I'm looking at it because when I put these masks back down, I don't want them to be in the same spot. Now, remember, when you're doing a pull, things are reversed. So if you're putting something down here on the right side of the plate, on the print, it's going to show up on the left. So working with masks is a bit of a brain twist. I'm not gonna lie. You have to really start thinking backwards and left to right. It can really play with your head a little bit, but that's part of the fun of gel printing. Now, another thing that I can do is I can use these masks. I did not use these in the previous pickup layer. So you don't have to use the masks that you just used. You can go in and use some that you haven't used before. But if you decide to use the ones you just used, just make sure they don't go down in the same place because we're trying to create an interesting looking composition. And I think I'm going to keep these blotches of color kind of where they are. So I'm going to start by rolling out this beautiful lilac shade first, and then mix in some of the blue. And I have some very distinct splotches here. I'm going to leave them be because I just want to see how they look with this print. Using this as my reference, I'm going to lay down some of these masks, but I'm going to put them in different spots so that we have a different look. I'm going to use this scrap that I cut off when I was making them. Put that right there. And I think that's it. One of the things that I'm trying to do is make sure that I don't lay one mask on top of another, which I accidentally kind of did right there, but so be it. I don't want to play around with it. I'm going to take my sheet of paper. I'm going to line it up best I can. I'm going to press from left to right. And I have something here called a Baron. This is spelled B-A-R-E-N. I'm a block printer, and we use these all the time in block printing. And these are good because they're like your hands. They help you push, but it produces even pressure across what you're pressing down. And I'm just going to get in there with my fingers a little bit around the edges of these masks, and let's see what we have. And this is the print. This is looking really fun and crazy and psychedelic. To me, this almost has a 1930s look to it. There was a French fabric designer named Sonia Delaunay who created really abstract, fun, beautiful prints for women's clothing. And her patterns kind of had this look to them. I'm debating right now as to whether I'm just going to leave this be or if I should add one more layer. One more thing I'd like to say about working with masks is that in printing, and it doesn't matter whether you're gel printing, block printing, silk screening, usually the lightest color of paint or ink gets put down on the fabric or the paper first, then the colors that are slightly darker, and then the very darkest colors go on top. But when you're working with masks, this is where you start to throw out those rules and you don't worry about them. In this particular print, we put down this bright orangey yellow first, then the darkest color went second, and then the lightest color went third, and that's how you're getting all these really fun looks. So this is a time when layering your paint colors, going from lightest at the bottom to darkest on top, you can take that rule and throw it out the window. Well, I've given it some thought and I've decided to not keep layering things on here. Sometimes with gel printing, I just decide to keep going. I'm going to add something new on top, and then I screw up the print and I don't like it. I like the way this looks right now, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And this is not the only way that you can create masks with cutout pieces of file folder. You can also use plants as masks, and that's exactly what I did here with this print. You can lay botanicals flat down on your plate and use them to mask out layers of paint. And I have two other videos on the channel in which I created this one, and there's a second video that shows you how to use plants and botanicals to make masks. So I will link them below in the description. And if you'd like to get my free gel printing supply list, you can also click on a link that will be in the description. This is a 9-page booklet, really, in which I show you everything that I'm using here in my practice, the plates that I use, the brayers, what kind of printmaking paper. There's a lot of information here about paint because your paints can make or break you. If you don't have good quality paints, you're not going to get good results. So I go over which brands I use and some color recommendations if you're just getting started with gel printing and you want to know the bare bones minimum as to what paints to buy so that you don't spend too much money on paints that you're not going to use. So the link for that will be below in the description box. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them below and I'll get back to you. And if you liked what you saw today, please give me a thumbs up, and there will be more gel printing goodness coming your way soon.